Over the last several weeks, a punishing air campaign over Iran has given the American and Israeli air forces complete aerial supremacy. They have successfully obliterated the vast majority of Iran's air defenses and missile launch capabilities, sunk nearly all of the tonnage in Iran's surface fleet, and eliminated swaths of the country's most senior leadership. This overwhelming tactical success has led President Trump to repeatedly declare victory in the conflict, pointing to a conventional military dominance that is virtually absolute. But there are actually two different wars currently being waged. America and Israel are easily winning the aerial war against the Islamic Republic. Meanwhile, Iran is waging a separate, asymmetrical war against the global economy, and they are winning it effortlessly. This map shows the Strait of Hormuz, the sole maritime passage connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. The math here is terrifying for global markets. Fully 1/5 of the entire global supply of oil and liquefied natural gas must travel through this specific corridor. At its narrowest point, the strait is only 54 kilometers wide, leaving just enough room for two extremely narrow shipping lanes. Iran does not need a functioning navy to close this choke point. All they need is cheap technology. By occasionally launching mines, missiles, or long-range drones into the water, they create an atmosphere of extreme risk. Merchant vessels and insurance companies simply refuse to sail through the passage at all. Looking at this chart, you can see the immediate economic blowback of that fear. Since the conflict began and shipping halted, global oil prices have spiked by more than 40%, while natural gas prices in Europe have surged by 70%. The United States is now trapped in an absurd mathematical equation. The military is helplessly burning through irreplaceable $4 million Tomahawk cruise missiles just to shoot down $50,000 drones, failing completely to stop an economic crisis from the air. The commander-in-chief is stuck at a strategic dead end. America cannot sit back and watch the global economy crash, but negotiating while Iran blocks the strait means accepting terms that look like a massive defeat. That leaves military escalation as the only remaining path. Option A is the most extreme. Launch a full-scale ground invasion to force the Strait of Hormuz open and permanently remove the regime's capability to threaten it. But invading Iran is not like invading Iraq. Iran is nearly 4 times larger, completely shielded by towering mountain ranges and high interior plateaus, and holds more than 3 times Iraq's population. This chart contrasts the scale of the two conflicts. America's 2003 invasion of Iraq required roughly 300,000 troops. If you adjust those numbers for Iran's geography and population, executing a successful invasion and occupation would require a force of well over 1 million soldiers. To pull off an operation of that size, the United States would have to commit to a Vietnam-level conflict that would inevitably force a return of the military draft. Option A is mathematically and politically impossible. Option B scales things down. Instead of a full invasion, the military could execute limited special forces raids to secure symbolic victories and acquire economic leverage. The first theoretical target is Isfahan, where the U.S. could send forces deep into hostile territory to seize Iran's supply of highly enriched uranium. But that uranium is stored hundreds of kilometers inland, buried deep underground in tunnels that American bunker buster bombs already collapsed. A raid would be incredibly dangerous. And most importantly, it does absolutely nothing to stop Iran from firing drones at the Strait of Hormuz. That leads to a more heavily discussed target, shown in this satellite view, Karg Island. Located just off the southwestern coast, this small island handles more than 90% of Iran's crude oil export capacity. Seizing it is well within the capability of the U.S. military. But fighting to control the island against mainland artillery and kamikaze drones would almost certainly wreck its delicate network of storage tanks and pipelines. Destroying Karg Island's infrastructure would sever Iranian oil from the global market entirely. Economists estimate that sudden loss could spike oil to $140 a barrel, actively worsening the exact economic catastrophe the raid was supposed to prevent. That leaves option C, deploying the U.S. Navy directly into the Strait of Hormuz to physically escort commercial tankers, a tactic last used in the 1980s. The vulnerability here is immense. A massive, slow-moving commercial ship like this liquefied natural gas tanker, crawling through a narrow corridor surrounded by hostile coastlines, is an incredibly easy target. To safely move these ships, each convoy demands intense military bandwidth. dedicated guided missile destroyers flanking the ships, plus continuous overhead protection from fighter jets and warning aircraft to track incoming threats. The United States simply does not have the fleet capacity to sustain this right now. Currently, there are only 8 destroyers available in the entire Middle East theater capable of executing these escort missions. Committing to an endless naval gauntlet is a trap. It forces the Navy to burn through scarce interceptor missiles while dangerously sapping American military power away from critical theaters like the Western Pacific. The administration is trapped by its own initial miscalculation. They went into this conflict believing that overwhelming air power and targeted strikes would cause the Iranian government to quickly collapse. They were wrong. By killing the supreme leader violently through a missile strike, the decapitation campaign forced the regime to instantly coalesce. They rallied behind an even more hardline ideological faction that refuses to negotiate while they still hold leverage. What began with promises of a rapid, decisive victory is devolving into a grueling war of attrition. This conflict is rapidly becoming America's version of Russia's war in Ukraine. The lesson here is brutal but simple. Bombs cannot alter physical geography. Advanced stealth fighters and complete air supremacy are completely useless against a choke point governed by mountains and narrow seas. Iran has the easier path to victory because they do not have to defeat the U.S. military. All they have to do is endure the bombardment long enough for the economic pressure of the blockade to trigger a recession in Western economies. By misjudging how hard it would be to stop a geographic blockade, the United States has engineered a foreign policy disaster. America must now choose between offering a humiliating concession to Tehran or watching the global economy slowly suffocate.